everyone, and welcome to another episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the studio at St. Thomas University. Obviously, Manny Cid is not here today. I'm filling in for him. My name is Luis Perez, the program director here at St. Thomas University for the communications program. Now, we have a really cool guest with us here today, the Grammy-nominated, often imitated, but never duplicated, Carlos de Yarza. Carlos, how you doing today?
Doing great, Luis. Thank you for having me.
So, thank you for being here. Where to start with Carlos de Garza? I mean, Matt, when you print out your resume, do you run out of ink? Because literally there's so many skills that you own. Yes, you have a claim to fame. Yes, you have so many things that you've been a part of, and now your current part of your life, it's vastly different yet totally the same. So let's back it up. Let's go back to the humble beginnings here. All right. Obviously, like I noted there, Grammy nominated, you have a musical background. Can we talk about where your love and passion for music came from and where it's lent itself to?
Well, I grew up in Miami. I was born in Cuba, but grew up here. Very musical family. My grandmother was a classical pianist. My grandfather was a classical guitarist. And we grew up with music all around us. And early on, I developed a talent for it, and I figured, if I have a band, I'll be less of a nerd, and girls will like me. So this was about 7th grade, and from there it just took off.
All right, so we've gotten much better than just trying to impress, 7th grade students at a middle school. Where was that moment that you really saw yourself in a position like, man, this is working out, like this music industry thing, which could be for a lot of people. And you told me off air, your family, although music was a part of your family, they wanted you not to be a part of it. Where was that moment that you're like, man, this is really going well for me? And
I'll try not to make it like a cliche thing, but for me, it was really the journey. And within that journey, there are many different moments. So when, those first little bands, we want to play at the hot club. So we did the hot club. We want to play at this place. Okay, we did that place. We want to play at an arena. We did an arena. We want to headline a show. We did that. So they're small goals, small little markers along the way.
Milestones.
Yeah, but there's no one amazing thing. And when the amazing thing does happen, not to minimize it, but it is also part of that journey. So one amazing thing that happened to me was, and I'm sure you're going to get to this at some point, but I had a song that hit number 1 on Billboard. And this was not pre-internet, but the internet was young and Billboard wasn't on the internet yet. So our lawyer called us and said, you're about to hit number 1 on Billboard about a week before the magazine was published. And my reaction was to giggle, because I was just giggling because I couldn't believe that it was a great, another milestone, another thing, but it was just part of that journey at that point. At that point, I had been in the business for probably over 10 years for sure.
So you're just making a very perfect segue here with what you're saying. It's some people at home are like, what are we talking about? What are we, And then the other people that do know, they're like, say it already, right? Say it already. So Carlos de Garza, he was one of the members of the Bayside Boys, and the Bayside Boys created the remix to the Macarena that made the Macarena what you know today. Obviously, the phenomenon that was in the '90s and seems to never die, honestly. We just had Tyga not too long ago, right? Bring it back and servicing it to a whole new audience. So many questions to ask you here, but I do want to ask you this: what was it like, from a prideful standpoint, if you will, to be the first real Latin song crossover, Spanglish, if you will? Like, you put Miami's ways on the map. Like, this girl Macarena is so Miami, so you really put Miami, obviously there's people before you, you have the Lukes, you have the Casey and the Sunshine Bands and stuff like that come out of South Florida, but then here's the first time ever that Spanglish, if you will. Can you talk about what that was like?
The Spanglish was actually key to the whole thing. And before, I was still in the music business, but before, around Luke, and we also had Gloria Stefan coming out of here. We had everything that was freestyle that came out of here. So Expose was out of here. There was a lot of music coming out of Miami. I was just part of the people who worked in that business who were trying to get their own music out. So the thing with the Spanglish with Macarena was somewhat of an accident. The way that was brought to us, Power 96 wanted to play it, and they said, we want to play this song, but it's in Spanish. Can you do something with it so we could play it? And I used to work with Power, doing different favors for them, so they would play our music or whatever we were pushing, and they were very kind about helping us out with that. So they brought us the record, and what they wanted, originally they said, Carlos, just have somebody put a rap on it and let's just put it on the air. But my thought was, let's give her a voice, because as Louis said, I know that girl. Yeah. If you grew up in Miami, we all know that girl.
We all know Macarena.
Yeah. So,
by the way, you killed the name Macarena. You guys killed it.
No,
there hasn't been anybody
Rio.
named Macarena since. It used to be a more common name back in the days.
That was Los del Rio. I take no responsibility. So I put on my writer's hat on, and as a songwriter, you often have to think as a different gender, as a different age, as a different experience. If not, your songs will be very boring, because one person's experience is very small, right? So you pretend, you play. So I said, okay, who is this girl? So those lyrics came out in English, and which was the requirement for Power. And
Power 96, by the way.
Power 96, by the way, yeah. So and then we sent it to the radio station, and it blew up. But the bilingual part was key to it being played at all on the radio.
In the Society of Mass Media course, we talk about how society reflects media, how media reflects society, and it's like a ping pong game. You know what I mean? What you do, I do, you do, right? Man, you guys affect society big time. I mean, you're talking about political rallies. You were a crossover. There was no genre at some point. You know what I mean? You had every neighborhood doing it. You had every person doing the dance. So I do want to ask you that. Who was that? Who was the inventor of the dance? Because it's probably more popular than the song itself. Because you can literally Macarena to anything, by the way.
Yeah. So Leila Cobo, who is a writer for Billboard, she's written books about it. She's done some research on this. And the dance itself, we have not found the roots of the dance. We know who the proto Macarena was, the dancer that inspired Los del Rio to write the original song. Her real name is Madalena. So Madalena, eventually they changed the name of the song to Macarena, but she's a Venezuelan flamenco dancer. But we don't know where the dance comes from. But I have a couple of theories. Theory one is in 1991, Madonna had a song named Vogue. Okay. So Los Rios' original Macarena that inspired the dance comes out at about 93, 94. And if you really look at the Macarena dance, it's a very childish vogue, right? It's a very easy vogue. Yeah. And then there was a singer named Taylor Dane who we were on the road with, and she claimed she invented it on one of her videos. And sure enough, she's doing a modified version of Madonna's voguing, which Madonna basically lifted from the clubs in New York. Yeah. And it does look like it, but nobody has come up with where exactly it came from.
Yeah, it's going to be impossible to find out. All right. Do want to ask you this. We're going to go back to the classroom and what we learned. If Manny's not hosting, I'm going to bring it to an educational forefront, whether we like it or not here. Do you believe that with the way the music scene is now, the way we drop tracks, if you will, nowadays, do you think Macarena would have been bigger or smaller? Do you think it even existed? Do you think it would have even been a thing?
I would not be able to tell you. Yeah. So I can tell you that when I was writing and producing that remix and writing the verse lyrics, I thought about it as something that was very disposable. I never expected it to have any longevity. right? For me, it was another project. I had 6 other things I was doing that day. I just put it together and sent it back to the radio station. I don't know if it would work today. I can tell you that every version that has come out after hasn't really done very well. It seems like people want just that that version, and I'm okay with it because it pays for my vacations. So I don't know if it would work. Now, you have more access than ever right now, whereas we had to make that in a studio. You can make a hit record in a bedroom right now, and often, they do. So from a technical standpoint, it's more possible than ever. From a song standpoint, I think it's a bit too cheesy. It was cheesy then, but it's ultra cheesy now.
Yeah. And the exposure standpoint, I mean, it depends who picks it up, right? I guess.
Well, everything has a faster life cycle,
Shelf life,
right? So when we put that out, it was 1995. So there was it's pre-internet days, absolutely pre-social. So in 95, Macarena took 6 months just to get on Billboard, to hit the top 40. And in 96, it took forever to get to number 1 because everything just moves lower, right? Taylor Swift drops a record today and it becomes number 1 immediately. Yeah. That's the way it works now because she puts it on TikTok. The next day it has 20 million views. She drops the video on YouTube. That gets 50 million views and it shoots up the charts immediately. Of course, it has a much shorter life, right? So something that may have lasted 10 weeks now lasts 2.
What stays true about you and your career professionally is that on to the next project. Even till today, it's on to the next project. So, yes, everybody wants to linger on the Macarena and stuff like that. Even I remember as a student when I first found out, saw the Oprah video, you're like, start giggling like a little child. Like, oh my God, that's my boy Carlos, right? But everybody's lingering and stuck on Macarena, and that's cool. Good, you have their attention. What are we doing next?
We truly didn't know what we wanted to do because the creation of the Bayside Boys was kind of a Frankenstein. I had no intention of going on the road. I had no intention of performing. I had no intention of making the Bayside Boys. All of this came out of a necessity because the men from Los Del Rio did not want to tour. They didn't want to come to America. They didn't want to go all over the world. They were in their 40s by then. They were done. And the label asked us, put something together and get it out there, right? So I saw an opportunity, particularly financially, to go out and kill it, and we did. So as soon as that is done, or it looks like it's about to be done, because we signed another contract with Atlantic for a follow-up, which they wanted it to sound just like Macarena, which also hit Billboard. I was already trying to get off that train. So, cut my hair, we changed our look, and we went hunting for a new record contract, and actually ended up getting signed to Crescent Moon, which is Emilio and Gloria's label that runs under Sony. So yeah, it was always what's next.
You're so hands-on with everything. For those of you who don't know, he is the vice president of marketing here at St. Thomas University. That's the next evolution of Carlos Yarza. God knows where we're going to be here, right? 10, 20 years from now with Carlos. Where now are we the Grammy nominated? How do we get to that? The artists you've worked with, how do we get to that point in our career here?
Where to start?
Well, yeah, like that's, you eventually start now. Assisting in the Latin music world really is what you start doing, correct?
Yeah, I was already doing that prior to Macarena.
Yeah.
One of our studios had already
Macarena
been built.
didn't hurt that process though at all.
It did not at all. It just made us more visible to more people.
Yeah.
So, in fact, the voice that you hear singing in Macarena is a friend that I met through working with Menudo. So, and if you don't know Menudo, they were very famous Latin.
Ricky Martin's band.
Yeah, Ricky Martin's band. Yeah. So, but he wasn't in it, by the way, just when I was working with him, because they age out. So I had a different group of really amazing, talented kids, and but one of their friends had a friend, and she became my friend, and then she became the voice that you hear. So it's all it's all related, right? Macarena brought definitely more eyes, which gave us different people that we could work with, and it also gets you very noticed.
We now have shifted from the music industry, if you will, and you told us off air, and it almost sounded too simple. How do we get into the world of education? How do we get into the higher education? How does Carlos de Yarza, leather pants,
pleather,
long hair, touring? I mean, your life was nightlife. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make a transition. What was that like? And do you often who do you see yourself as? Because at the end of the day, that's all you know.
Well, I can tell you this: my mom is a retired teacher, my aunt's a teacher, my sisters are teachers. So in a way, I was destined to go into education. It's almost like I try to get out, but they pull me back in. So at some point when I removed myself from the music business, self-retired, I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I had worked on a couple of different projects, consulted here and there, but my mom called me and said, hey, St. Thomas University is looking for what you do. And I said, Mom, you don't know what I do. You have no idea what I do. And she said, no, go talk to them. And I did. I came to St. Thomas and I fell in love with the place. I drove in through that front gate and I still do every day. And I think about that because it reminds me of why I'm here. And even though I came just to make her happy, I stayed here since, did we figure out it was 2008, 2009?
Something like that, yeah. Late 2010-ish area. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I was I'm an alumni here from St. Thomas. I got my bachelor's in communications here. And Carlos at this time, your official title is lab guy. Like let's just be honest, just a lab guy. And I say just in the most endearing possible way. I always tell him, you're the best professor I never had. What now? Now, it's another climb for you. Like, you went from being that guy who kind of edits things for Power 96, and then, bam, Macarena. You went the guy as the lab guy who helps me figure out Final Cut Pro, and then, bam, you're the vice president of marketing at St. Thomas University. What does it take to be that? Because one thing is opening the door, and then you just kind of burst it open, and you move in with all your equipment, and you say, this is mine.
I think for me, and this is definitely like an answer that's just me, that has worked for me personally, is that whenever I do a project, whenever I try to do something, that goes from work projects, working out, whatever I'm doing, painting a room, I want to do the best possible that I can do at that time with the ability that I have at that time. For example, in music, we all have a drawer of shame. The drawer of shame is where all the stuff that didn't make it lives, right? And I have a drawer of shame. Everybody does. So does every creator. But if you can look back in that drawer and say, wow, this is bad, but this is the best I could do at that time, that's the best way to go. So every time that I'm presented with a challenge or a problem or an opportunity, I just go hard to be the best thing I can do there. Bring the whatever I have to learn, whatever A game I have to bring to make it a successful venture. And then you move on to the next project. So if there's a quality that has allowed me to do that, it's just that. I aim to be at the moment where I find myself to do the best job I can with what is given to me.
You take control of St. Thomas University. They didn't even have a marketing department, let's be honest. And I know enough about St. Thomas to know that, for a lack of a better phrase, things weren't going so well. But then you bring this brand new, fresh idea of branding and marketing and everything that comes with that in social media, and you bring it to the forefront on what has been the best kept secret in Miami. Well, secrets don't pay out too well, right? Can you talk about what team you put together? Give love to your team, by the way, too. The team you put together, and obviously the addition of gentlemen like David Armstrong, President Armstrong, to this institution. What has that storm been like for you?
Well, everything started with Armstrong. President Armstrong, I wasn't even here when President Armstrong, I left St. Thomas for a bit, and President Armstrong reached out and said, hey, all these people are talking about you. Who are you? And I said, oh, okay. So we started a conversation and he brought me in. He is very much about marketing. He's very much about branding. He's very much about getting the word out. So what he did was create the department and set us up for success, because he wants that story about St. Thomas University told. Our past story, our present story, and our future story. So I do that with a team of creators that we almost just won Creative Team of the Year. We lost to the March of Dimes, but that's okay. The March of Dimes is a good organization. No.
Yeah, tiptoe on that one, huh?
Yeah, no shame there. But I have Natalia, who does social media. I have Rob, who is a designer. Evie, another designer. Chris, who does web. Walter, who writes for the university. And Tony. Yeah, Tony. So, and Tony, I will confess that I completely stole him from campus ministry. When I first got the gig as vice president, my first demand, I said, President Armstrong, I need Tony. And he was kind enough to say, okay, get him. And Father Capot wasn't here yet, so it's a good thing, because if not, he would have beat me up.
Yeah, no. That's Abetico to me. That's my Abetico. You know very well you need that guy you rely on heavily. I mean, and that's your Tony. That's your Tony. By the way, I know you guys are gonna watch this episode. The whole crew, we love you guys so much. Cool. So let's turn this around. By the way, the studio that we're doing this podcast in right now, built by this guy as well. 30 minutes or whatever long this episode is going to be is not long enough to talk about how important he has been, not only to this institution, but people's lives here. Literally, to this day, any big thing that's ever happened to me in my career, he's one of the first phone calls that I have. And that's a true testament to how important you are beyond your title as a person. With that said, we're ready for questions from the students who are looking our way beyond the cameras. What do we got?
I wanted to ask you, you grew up in an era without YouTube or really the conventional internet. Nowadays, people could really just look up a tutorial to find out anything that they want to. So I wanted you to maybe describe how that was for you growing up, and maybe describe the difference between how it was for you starting out and how it would be for someone in, this day and age looking to get into the industry.
I have 3 words for you, which still work with YouTube. Read the manual. Everything you buy, every program, every piece of equipment, every car, everything you purchase has a manual. Whether that be online now or whether old school paper, read the manual. Now, YouTube is faster, but sometimes it doesn't get there. And sometimes you don't get to understand the depths of what your equipment can do from YouTube. You have to read the manual. We had a little bit of a technical issue right before the cast started, right? Yeah. And I said, check this setting. The only reason I know that is because I read the manual on that piece of equipment. I don't have to see it, but I know it's there because I read the manual. So read the manual.
So I wanted to ask you, you obviously had some success with the Macarena and everything with the music industry. How differently do you think your life would be at this point if it wasn't for that song, if it wasn't for that remix that you worked on?
I think it would be about the same. The Macarena was a big blip. I call it like a big blip in my career, but I had a career, successful career before that, and I had a successful career after that. I think that I was on a path, I was on a career path that with or without the Macarena would have been very, very similar. Of course, Macarena offered some extra things that I'm very grateful for. But I knew eventually I would get out of the business. Things were changing too fast. There was too much technology. And to be honest, there was an old guard of people who controlled the business who were not moving fast enough for me or for the technology And I said, I'm done. I can't deal with telling at that point a 60-year-old what Napster and LimeWire is and an MP3. So this industry is going to die because they don't understand the technology. So I knew I was going to be out no matter what.
So I have a buddy who's a producer too, and he started in high school, and now he's working with like big name hip hop artists that you would know. And he kind of tells me that the kind of fell, like these people just fall into his lap because of like YouTube. They see his stuff on YouTube. Like back in the day when you were doing it, YouTube wasn't like a thing. So how did these people fall in your lap that you worked with, or did you have to go actively looking?
So back then, the way it worked was it was a word of mouth and connections. And this is the part I didn't like about the business. It's very about who you know and networking, which is still a part for every business. So please go out and network. But it was more about, oh my God, I heard this record. Who did that? You would read the credits. It's so-and-so. Who is so-and-so? Call somebody. Oh, you know this guy? Okay, let's go. You know this girl? Let's go. So it was all about making connections with the people that you enjoyed. Once I opened the studio, I took part of the time that I had the studio open to rent it out, to offer it as a studio for other artists, and that gave me a new world of new artists and new things that came in. So that helped a lot too.
We got time for one more question.
So you're the marketing and communications director at the school, and you work a lot with looking into the future. What do you see for this school within like 5 to 10 years? How do you see the growth for the school?
I'm very ambitious in my outlook. And I've had conversations with multiple people who are stakeholders in this. And what I can tell you is that for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been on a growth path. All you have to do is look around. This place will continue to grow in the next 5 to 10 years. There's going to be some surprises, positive surprises along the way. With that will come growing pains, which means as of right now, as you know, all of our dorms are full up. There's too many students, but we're going to have to build a new dorm. We're going to have to build new facilities. We're going to have to build a performing arts center. We're going to have to build a new college of law. But it's all positive things. Sometimes, well, not all the time, the dark side of growth is that you have to take care of all these small things that happen along the way. And to be truly successful, you have to be able to focus on the growth and also managing all those changes that are coming along with it. So Louis can tell you that in 2007, 2008, this place looked nothing like it does now. And my goal is for you guys to come back in 2030 and say, whoa, what happened here? In a positive way. I don't want you to recognize the place. I want you to still love it, and I want you to be a part of it, but I want you to see what we've done since you left.
Great questions, by the way, guys. So this is the part of the episode where we turn things around, Carlos, and you get to ask the host a question.
Oof, this is always fun. Louis.
No.
Do you still have that love song you wrote about me?
I did. So when I was a student in the Mac lab, it was Anna and Eugenio in the room. By the way, if you guys look at this, I love you guys. We're students just like you guys, and you guys know I clown around a lot. And what were the exact words?
I love it that he's embarrassed.
Yeah,
no, I'll ask you a real question.
But that shows you that taught me how to run my classroom. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm not I'm not your parent, so it's not my job not to be your best friend. You know what I mean? Like, there's still the respect level, but I want you to feel comfortable. And that definitely, even though you asked a very stupid question, a really smart answer came out of it. And if anything, that was a credit to how you ran the lab. And yeah, we learned so much from you, but we could clown with you too, and not disrespectfully, but out of pure love. And I think especially in this industry, man, like if you don't got that, you're not going to stay afloat, you know?
And the thing about the lab is the lab he's talking about is like the Mac Lab 1.0. That became the creative center for the school, pretty much. Everybody who was doing anything, who was editing, who was writing, who was painting, who was drawing, everybody was in the Mac Lab. And it used to be at Fernandez Center, so it was removed. So it was like a hideaway for all the crazies.
Even before that, the Mac Lab that was
in Donnellan. Remember Donnellan?
Yeah, that was my interpretation of the Mac Lab. I had both. That's the good part I had. You go back to asking another question because I'm really trying to think about the words of the song, and as I think about it,
I have a recording.
As you know, I'm sure you do. As I'm thinking about it, it's not going to make the podcast. So go ahead.
So you also wear many hats. You do, you do the announcing gig. You do different teams. You come here and you work with our students and you teach our students. What is your favorite part of the day?
Man, just like which part do I enjoy the most? Honestly, the production classes where you kick back, relax, just talk, smack. It's pretty much like even though it's we're producing the questions necessary, we're getting the edits necessary. It's just being around the students, man. It keeps you young. That's first and foremost. It keeps you young. But it's fun. It's fun to clap back between each other. That's the cool part. Not only that, and yesterday as I was announcing the baseball game, I thought about this, but I didn't say it because there was no reason to be so emotional. But I looked across, the table was full, and I'm like, man, my students are literally here doing this with me. And as much as I hope they think, yeah, it was a 4-hour ball game. It was terrible. There were 6 errors in the ball game. It was horrendous, really. But we got to work our magic together and still vibe and have a great time. And that I just hope that, later in the future, whatever we're doing in our lives, we go back, man, we really should have appreciated that moment. I hope we don't lack that ideology, in those moments. I don't think
you will, or they will, because I spoke to Eugenio. Eugenio graduated around the same time same class or a little bit after, right?
I think I was 12. I think he's like 14.
All right. So Eugenio's he's a producer for ESPN right now, and I spoke to him a little bit about his experience, and one of his most memorable experiences is that table before there was anybody, right? One of his most memorable experiences is working that camera by himself, and at that point he was announcing and working the camera and doing all of this by himself. And when he came back a few years ago, remember we took that nice picture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was wowed by all the students that are now participating in this, right? Yeah. And how this has grown from something that at the beginning was just Louis, and then Louis and Eugenio, and then a couple of other cats, and little by little, it has grown to have the potential to what we're going to do this fall. We say with the football broadcasts, which are going to have 85 cameras and all of that jazz.
I think it's safe to say that Eugenio and I made it cool. It makes, like, no one wanted to be. It's 2011, 2012. Live streaming is just becoming a thing at this time, and we looked around. And we said, "Man, we're not live streaming our sporting events." And we took it amongst ourselves. Okay, figure it out. What company does this? What company does that? How can we connect to this? If we look back at it, it's probably horrible. Like, it's probably horrendous. Like, as far as what the standards is today, but we were the first, and that's all that mattered. And from there, I remember even like the merchants of the days, they'd be like, "Oh, I always log in with your email," and I haven't been around for like 5-6 years. But it was cool to know that we were the beginning of that. But now you fast forward, and then the announcing stuff. The time was where I now could download music, I could download sound effects. I just didn't. Back in the days, you just announce a game. I went in, music, sound effects. I became like a big show, And if I look now where announcing is, especially at the collegiate level down in South Florida, it's hard for me to ignore that I brought it to another level, because now it's a standard to do all this other stuff. So with that said, it all started here, though. That all started here out of a necessity, and now it's become a standard.
And now you have to do the same thing for the communications program.
Absolutely. But I'm gonna bring this to the forefront. Why not? But the students are now announcing and stuff like that, and obviously they're new at it. And you know, he knows who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna put his name out there. And they're like, oh, we want this way and that way and that way. And I go to them. There was never a standard. Why is there a standard now? Now I've made it a standard, so let's not forget that part. That's the way I do it. I do it just became the standard. We have to realize that we got to grow to that with others, you know. But yeah, any other questions? No.
Read the manual.
Read the manual. All right, well, that does it for another episode of 305 Vox Populi here at the Studio at St. Thomas University. Thank you so much, Carlos, for being out here. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace. Are we still doing MySpace?
MySpace, high five.
High five. All right, that does it for us.
See, he doesn't know what my high five was.
Manny, get back. This place is going crazy. We'll see you next week.